John Lynch spoke at the league meetings today and said good things about Brock Purdy, unless he didn't. And also said good things about Brandon Aiyuk, unless he didn't. And also said things about Kyle Juszczyk that were just plain weird. We'll talk about all of it on today's Gold Standard podcast. What is good, everybody? Welcome to another Gold Standard podcast on the Gold Standard and the Fans First Sports Network. I'm Rob Stats Guerrera alongside Vish Kumar. And Vish, happy Monday.
Happy Monday, Stats. We're back. John Lynch gave us some stuff to talk about. Here we go.
Okay, so what you're going to hear, we'll read some of his quotes. There's a lot of speculating about what he might have meant. Part of the confusion is the fact that John Lynch did not sit down in front of a group of reporters. This was an audio-only meeting. Now, maybe he was face-to-face with the reporters and they were only allowed to record it. I don't know. I thought I saw Grant Cohn describe it as an audio-only meeting, and you weren't allowed to post the audio anywhere. So none of the 49ers beat writers could post the audio, which is leading to some confusion, particularly around what John Lynch said about Brock Purdy, Vish, because of maybe the phrasing of a question and John Lynch's answer. He was asked about
wonderful.
Right. He was asked about a Brock Purdy contract because remember, in January after the season ended, Brock Purdy said he wanted to have a new deal by phase one of the OTAs. So John Lynch was asked about that, and he said, quote, "I don't think it's too optimistic to think that a deal could get done before the first phase of OTAs," which means he thinks a deal could get done soon. Some people were like, wait, it's too optimistic. Like there was confusion there. But what Nick Wagoner and others have said is John Lynch says he hopes that a deal gets done soon and that it's not too optimistic to think that a deal could be done before the offseason program even begins.
So he said a whole lot of nothing. He said he hopes and we could get the deal done.
And he also said there's no guarantee, again, that a deal gets done. That's what I was going to get to a little later. He also made sure to throw that caveat back in there one more time.
I think my issue with this deal is I feel like they're giving us a lot of this to have bullshit to talk about in the offseason. Like, hey, see, the 49ers are doing their job. See, they are trying to get him signed. See, they want to get him signed. That's kind of the messaging they want to have going across to the fan base right now. But the problem with that, Rob, is we've gotten two consistent pieces of messaging that we can kind of directly correlate to either side to kind of track where this negotiation is going. One is from the 49ers through their levy of beat reporters, which is that they want to pay this guy less than $50 million, right? They want him less than that top salary deal. They don't want him in that Dak Prescott range. They want to hold his contract to a bargain. The other side of it is the one report around that combine time, like a week after it, that we got from the Brock Purdy side saying that he wants to get every penny, which is what you and I have been speculating for months, despite others saying the contrary because of Brock Purdy's religious beliefs, somehow correlating to how much money he wants. I've seen stuff like that. That's not fair. I don't like that. And so with that, I feel like we have John Lynch coming up here and saying, well, I hope we can get the deal done. I would like to get the deal done. But conversely, we have no new information on where the two sides are at other than Brock Purdy wants, as he should, to get the most amount of money as he can on his first contract, right? And the 49ers want to underpay him. They want to hold him to the value they believe his market is at. And that doesn't give any credence to anything John Lynch said yesterday from my standpoint. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's clear they have a number in mind for Brock. My thing was this. I feel like at this point, there's two takeaways that you can have, two conclusions that you could draw from the fact that a deal still is not done, despite the fact that they have all this time to negotiate, despite the fact that the last time they had to give a big money contract out to a quarterback, they got it done in February and made him the highest paid player in the history of the NFL. So the only two conclusions I can draw are either one, the 49ers just don't think he's the guy, period, flat out. Or number two, there are some serious concerns about Brock Purdy's arm and the health of his arm and the health of his whole throwing apparatus. As Stephen McGinnis asks, Does anyone know the status on Brock's elbow? Has that question been asked at the conference? I don't know all the questions that were asked because, again, they couldn't release the audio, but I can't help but wonder if Brock Purdy was too injured to finish his last start. I have heard from multiple people this offseason that there was weekly maintenance that had to be done on that arm to give Brock Purdy a shot to play in the game that week. It would make more sense that the 49ers would be doing what they are doing if there was some concern about Brock Purdy, and that is sort of holding everything up.
I kind of see where you're coming from, but even with that, I feel like when you're dealing with a throwing arm injury to an investment, it's one or the other. It's not a let's pay him medium money and see what happens. And so that's where I feel like I understand. And I think there's some level of, I think part of the hesitation is where you're coming from, right? I think people have reduce this conversation down to solely football, right? And use this contract negotiation as confirmation bias on their opinion of Brock Purdy. See, the 49ers want to pay him less, so therefore he's not as good as we thought. Or see, he wants this much money, so therefore he is as good as we thought. But I do agree with you that there are more variables in place. And certainly I think the injury is one variable to it. But I think ultimately, Rob, I think it's the injury plus what I just talked about. I think they want to be very careful with his contract. And I think that's a direct indictment to where they think his value is relative to the other quarterbacks in the NFL. They want to make it clear that they don't believe he's an upper echelon guy, and they don't even want to pay him to make it look like he could be that sort of guy, or he has a chance to be that sort of guy. They don't even want to deal in that business. And it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out because, again, John Lynch's quotes today are going to be like, see, the 49ers are right on track. See, they are very aware of the Aiyuk situation. They know what they're doing. But I don't really get much from his quotes that would indicate anything other than we're probably at a stalemate right now, and they're probably looking at each other because Brock wants to be at the top of the market, which is where his stats, everything else indicates he should be. And the 49ers look at his size. They look at his injury history. They look at what you talked about with the treatments. They look at the long-term health of the player. Then they look at his overall upside with where they drafted him and his long-term physical capabilities, and they want to hold him to a number regarding that. But I do want to make it clear. I think it's all of those things combined, right? I think it's not just how he plays. It's not just the injury. It's every one of those things that has formulated them to come to that number to try and keep him a little bit above Baker and a little bit above Sam Darnold, which is how Kawakami has really been pushing it.
More quotes from John Lynch. I understand why Brock wants to be in before phase 1 of OTAs. We'd like that very much so. We've just got to find that right place for both sides. I would love nothing more for that to be the case. Brock wants to be with us. We want Brock to be with us. When that's the case, these things typically get done, and it does happen. And does it happen this offseason? I don't know. Hopefully it happens real soon this offseason. And then he was asked, do you think Brock would actually play under his current contract, which is about $5 million? And Lynch said, I think we're going to get the deal done. That's what I believe. So we'll just leave it at that. Does that make you feel any better about things, any worse, or does it not change your opinion at all?
No, it doesn't change my opinion at all. Just like, I guess, the more positively connotated vague answers didn't change my opinion. The somewhat negatively connotated vague answers with the, whether we get it done this year or we're just going to get it done. Like, I'm not going to take much from that. I think he's giving a very politician's answer. I think, John Lynch, the unfair thing, actually fair or unfair, I guess he gets paid to do this as well. He kind of has to sit on the grenade during this time of the 49ers offseason. Mm-hmm. And the unfortunate thing for him is the last 4 or 5 years, there's always been a grenade at this time, where the 49ers are doing something that doesn't make sense, that has everybody scratching their head, and they got to put John Lynch in front of everybody to scratch his face and not make sense. And this is just another one of those situations. I think no new information would be the update if I had to guess what's in John Lynch's head, but I don't think you can come to the media the second time you're talking to them in, 3 months since the season ended and be like, yeah, no new information. And so I think that's why it's worded this way.
Lynch said his first answer at the combine in February was, we're talking, right? We're having conversations. Mm-hmm. Well, that's over a month ago. It's basically 2 months ago because all of March and all of February, pretty much. They have to
Right.
be.
The combine's the week after the Super Bowl, correct?
Yeah, like they have to know how far apart can they possibly be at this point. That's essentially what I'm trying to say. Like, it just seems like, how could there be no update at this point? They've been talking. They've said that they've been talking. Come
What do
on.
you think? What do you think no update means?
It
No
means that,
positive update,
right. The
right?
49ers have their number. Brock's side is clearly not satisfied with that number. And that's where we
That's
are.
probably where they are right now, right? And it might not even be a negative update, but non-news in this case isn't necessarily a positive update. And I think that's why they go with non-news instead of, hey, the update is that there's no update. Instead, it's like, hey, no, we are working towards it. It's how you describe it, right? This is just, I think, good PR. I think this is why also, Rob, I'm glad I do software engineering and data science and stuff on the side, because these are the dog days to me of having to cover or talk about a football team when this type of bullshit is being peddled and it's bullshit, but you got to put it up because this is what you have to talk about. And it's what the 49ers beat is really doing with this one. And I'm glad that the audio data created some level of controversy where no one really knows, so that
What
there's some extra interesting to this.
I also would really like to be able to hear John Lynch's voice, to hear the inflection, to hear the tone, because
It matters so much, right?
yes, I keep going back to the press conference he had, the last press conference after the season. He got asked about Debo, and the quote was, "Oh yeah, Debo's going to be a part of our team. We're not in the business of getting rid of good players." But if you heard John Lynch say it, he was like, yeah, Debo's a good player. We're not in the habit of getting rid of good people. So yeah." And then they ended the press conference. Like, if you heard it, you knew Debo was gone. But if you just read the quote, it gave you a totally different impression. So I wish we could hear the audio.
Yeah, I agree. And there's other moments too. That's a great specific example, but there's other moments where you see a quote of him saying something and you're like, oh, that's big news. And then you actually go listen to it in the presser and you're like, he didn't really say it how the quote read to me. He kind of just said it as a thing. And if you take the quote out of context, right, as good media tends to do in the modern age, it can create a story.
Yeah, I just can't believe they did it that way. Like, John Lynch can't sit down in a chair somewhere at this glorious hotel and just be on camera and
I if I had to guess, Rob, I would guess that the informal nature of it was due to the activities and festivities going on in this season of the NFL. This is party season.
I don't know. I'm not going to speculate. It wouldn't shock me, but I'm not going to speculate. But that is the situation with Brock Purdy. I do think that I was a little filled with hope because he just seemingly kept talking about like how they both sides want to do it and it can happen very quickly. And so I was like, all right, maybe they're inching closer. I don't know. But he continues to say that like they don't have to do anything, that it might not happen. Right. And we all know they have Mac Jones there in place.
I think that's the pressure on Brock, right? That's the slight pressure that he's putting while massaging the situation. Bless you.
Oh, I muted myself. No one was even going to know.
Oh, come on. You did a hole.
Shoot. I know. Well, I mean, I have to sneeze. I tried to be slick.
I blessed you.
Thank you. I do appreciate that. Okay. So that is what John Lynch said about Brock Purdy. Unfortunately, he kept talking and he said some other stuff. And look, I understand that we're in the season of lying, right? And I understand that you can't always tell the truth. There's some must lie situations. There's some things that you just have to say in certain situations. But John Lynch also talked about Brandon Aiyuk, and he said he expects Brandon Aiyuk to be part of the team. And he tried to claim that all the Aiyuk trade talks were a spillover of people calling from last year. He said it's probably a spillover, people calling. You always take calls from folks. We've always been interested in Brandon being part of the Niners. He's doing well after the surgery. He said they don't regret the contract, which is just a flat out lie, Vish, because they've been telling everybody how much they hate that contract.
Yeah. The fact that he's actually addressing all of these things tells you what you need to know about it, right? Because if all of these things weren't true, what would he come out and say? Be like, no, we actually love Brandon Aiyuk. That was from last year. People were calling. So, he just accepted their calls because they were calling from last year about Brandon Aiyuk. You know how things go in the NFL. Or do you think he would come and laugh in your face and be like, people were calling about Brandon Aiyuk, dude? You know what I mean? Like, there's a difference in how these two things get reacted. When you have to openly, I feel like usually when you deny something, and you go out of your way to specifically deny each one of those things, unless it's like a completely out there piece of where it's just propaganda everywhere, usually there's some truth to it. That's why you're coming out and saying, right? Like when you come out and say, I don't know where they got this Mac Jones things from. Guess what? They got it from you. And so that's the same thing with the Brandon Aiyuk thing. And I think it's unfortunate because the other quote, right, and I'm sure you're going to mention it sometime in our show, is John Lynch saying there are still Hall of Fame worthy players on this roster. Brandon Aiyuk is one of the most, other than obviously the devastating injury he's returning from, he is one of the most highest upside, talented, young, ascending players on this team. He should be one of the highest marketed players on this team right now, especially as they're transitioning. They just paid him a big contract. He's got star potential. He's got kind of a low-key personality. Maybe the fan base certainly loves him and treats him like a star. Like, there's ways that you could have started projecting this season with Deebo Samuel out the door and kind of presenting Brandon Aiyuk as your new star in the receiving core. And the 49ers have done the exact opposite in terms of their marketing and handling of it. And it's confusing to me, honestly, Rob, because for everything they talk about moving forward, this is why I say I find certain themes to be contradictory. When you talk about, like, we still have things to build around, we have things moving forward, this would be one of the pieces I would be yelling at the forefront. Hey, look at this guy. Look at what he did when he was healthy. Even last year, look at the way he was coming along the last couple of weeks before he got hurt. But they have not done that at all this offseason, which makes it confusing because of all their stars and cachet and high key all pro players, he's the only one that's young. He's the only one that's still growing. And so it's a weird thing all across the board because of that to me. What say you?
No, I completely agree with you. You should, everything about Brandon Aiyuk, you could argue he's the guy with the arrow pointing up on offense, and Brock. They're both young, right? It's those two. Kittle's arrow is Kittle's awesome, and he was awesome last year, but
probably plateaued, right?
Yeah, we know where he is. Trent Williams clearly, on 17 or 18, to use a golf analogy, of his career. Christian McCaffrey could be done. We don't know, hopefully he comes back healthy, but we have no idea what he's going to be. So you're right about the trajectory of Brandon Aiyuk, and they haven't done that. And they also, Vish, when all this stuff came out, that Silver article about how much they regretted the Aiyuk deal, and Tim Kawakami started talking about it, nobody denied it from the 49ers. There was utter silence. There was, Jed York could text Matt Maiocco and be like, hey, we love Brandon Aiyuk. This is bogus. The negotiation, everybody knows that was a long thing, but we're happy that he's a part. They didn't say anything. They didn't say anything until today. So they were totally fine with that being out there. And that, to me, spoke volumes, too.
Yeah, and not to mention they took it up to the last hour, right? The 24th or the 23rd hour and 59 minutes for this is tomorrow when Brandon Aiyuk gets some guaranteed money.
Right.
And the Adam Schefter report, I want to say came out Saturday or Friday, that, this money is coming to Brandon Aiyuk as if now there's no plans to trade him. And then John Lynch essentially denies it 24 hours before that kicks in. So it sounds like Jed York got the money ready and they're going to pay Brandon Aiyuk. And then that's why John Lynch can now come out and say, yeah, all of this was bullshit.
And it's not just Brandon Aiyuk. Remember, there's
1903.
$75 million of bonus money that's going to go out tomorrow because it's Aiyuk, it's Bosa, it's McCaffrey, it's Jennings, it's Lenore. It's a lot of money, and Jed York is going to have to pay up. By the way, I saw this comment from Speaker, YouTube channel member. Shout out to Speaker and all our YouTube channel members, including Becca, 49ers Giant Sharks. You get the double fist pump who just joined up. Thank you so much for the support. It's less than $3 a month. Oh, yeah, a little fist pump. Speaker says Jed wanted an audio-only interview because he's tired of the bad press. Newsflash, Jed, the bad press is because of you. Yes. Sorry, Jed, if you don't like
how does the audio help that, though?
maybe, there's no video, so it adds a little something. It's a little different when there's no video or audio and people just have to read the quotes.
Look, if I was tired of the bad press, and this is going to come across like a shot, it's not meant to be. This is just seriously what I would do if I was tired of the bad press. I would sit down John Lynch with David Lombardi and do a 25-minute interview right now and put it on the 49ers channel. That's what I would do. I'm not saying that as a shot or anything. I'm saying if you are worried about press right now and you want to sell things a certain way and you want questions asked a certain way, that's what you would probably do. I don't really understand how audio versus video affects it unless John Lynch maybe was a little bit red or did what Jay Glazer suggested with the Mai Tais.
They also didn't let anybody publish the audio. That's like, it wasn't just that it was audio only. It's just quote, I'm sure maybe people recorded it so they could have the quotes, so they could type it up and whatnot. But
I'm off of Twitter. Not that the algorithm is so great that I would have seen the information if I was on Twitter anyway, but did anybody post the reason as to why they didn't allow the audio to be released?
The only reason I know that is because Grant said it in, he did like a walk and talk video, and he said it was audio only and you're not allowed to publish the audio. So that's the only reason that I know. A couple other quotes from Lynch. He did the hand wave to ownership, that our ownership has been tremendous. They've given us every resource that we need, and that's not stopping. We're going to continue to be aggressive. At the end of this, I would surmise that we're going to be a top 5 spending team again. Well, yeah, if you have to give a new contract to a quarterback, that's automatically going to put you top 5 in spending, but I'm not throwing any bouquets to the 49ers. Then when Lynch was asked about, letting players go this offseason, he said, I know it's hard to watch. Believe me, it was hard to execute. I like being aggressive. Well, you said being aggressive wasn't going to stop. Now you're saying it was hard to let go of all those guys and you'd rather be aggressive. Like, just acknowledge what is going on. Just say it. Just admit it at least.
I don't even mind him not admitting it as much. I just hate the pandering towards ownership, right? You could just be like, look, we made irresponsible financial decisions, and so we had to take a look at ourselves in this free agency. We took a second approach, right? That's funny.
Astro says, is Lynch looking out his window at Aiyuk's progress? Well done.
That's funny. Good one. We've made a mistake and we've taken a different approach this offseason, but pandering towards the ownership like, hey, no, we are spending, and giving the statistics of spending as if you somehow get a cookie for being top 5 spending in the NFL. Like, the best teams in the NFL are top 5 in spending. That's what you do to win in the NFL. So it's hard for me to look at that and then, give them credit. The other part to this is, how much is John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan making, and what's their contract have to do with this? Because I feel like those numbers are probably some huge numbers that are affecting thoughts on all of this.
And Salah's new deal too, which he was reportedly very handsomely paid, one of the highest paid coordinators in the league, if not at the top of the list for defensive coordinators. He's up there.
And I don't want to call the guy out, but they got a position coach who makes $1 million a year, not counting the guy's pockets. But he's supposed to be the best of the best. And you name one defensive lineman he has developed. He's gotten first-round picks. He's gotten busts that have retread, like Yetur Gross-Matos. He's gotten Malik Collins, who was pretty good in Houston. He got Javon Hargrave, who was a stud in Philadelphia as a big signing, and he got him to regress. I'm just saying.
Because Kasarik, the defensive line coach, who they love, does make a lot of money.
Because here's the thing. Jim Tomsula was a terrible head coach. But in the Harbaugh era, I remember like an ascension for players like Tony Giardetti used to be able to come in and play snaps for them, right? Like Quinton Dial was a player that ascended in that era, right? Like there were players that contributed. I'm not talking about building a defensive line where Jim Tomsula made Justin Smith. Nobody made Justin Smith. Justin Smith made Justin Smith, right? That's not what I'm saying. I'm not even saying he made Ray McDonald. I'm talking about getting contributions from defensive linemen 4 to 7 in the roster. That's what, to me, coaching is going to do. And then you get Aldon Smith to play like Aldon Smith. Well, Kasarik gets A production out of his A-plus player, which is Bosa. He doesn't get A-plus production out of his A-plus player. He gets A production out of his A-plus player. And then he gets C production from his B players. And he gets D production from his C players. That's not a great coach to me. And I'm not even coming here to tell you Tom Sula is a great coach. I'm just comparing the two resumes. And for some reason, this guy, because he yells every offseason, it's just a spectacle. But who has he yelled at for it to become productive?
I mean,
and they spend more on this defensive line than anybody.
They certainly have had some very high-profile misses, right? Kinlaw, obviously, a miss. Drake Jackson, obviously, a miss. Solomon Thomas, ugh, for many reasons. Not just that he didn't pan out, but because of the opportunity cost of what they didn't
But
get.
they never even got the best football out of him either, right?
Right. I mean, he's still he's carved out a career.
He's been okay since he's left. But Kraseric, when he came, okay, Solomon Thomas is the 3rd overall pick, was a bust. They couldn't even make him a decent rotational piece.
And he was that for other teams. And Javon Kinlaw just got $30 million guaranteed from Adam Peters.
Yeah, apparently he's a total stud, guys. Apparently. We were right all along.
No, I think that's a legitimate thing. And look, maybe the 49ers are saying we're banking on Robert Saleh to sort of help put all the pieces together and maximize these guys. And you should expect that from your coaches. That's good. That's great. And I'm not saying it won't work. Maybe it will. But
if he didn't have the reputation he had, I wouldn't look at this so closely, because I do think in general it's very hard to get into deciphering what a position coach is doing or how they're contributing, right? I don't think Kraseric makes Bosa, but if Bosa feels enabled by being coached by Kraseric, that's a powerful thing I can never account for in the way I just made the argument. So I hate doing it that way. But for some reason, every offseason, it's just like the broadcast has to remind you what an offensive weapon Kyle Juszczyk is, we have to be reminded about the energy, the yelling and screaming. And for that, this defensive line hasn't produced. They haven't been able to take scraps and turn them into riches. And even when they've put riches into this defensive line, it's not like they've turned those riches and built a gold house.
Speaking of Kyle Juszczyk, Vish, do you want to hear what John Lynch had to say about him? Remember the bizarre, hey, we're cutting you. You're visiting Pittsburgh. Now we're bringing you back. We're guaranteeing you an extra year on your contract that you didn't have before. Lynch was asked about it, and he said,
did that make sense to you? I actually want to hear what I've read this 3 times. It doesn't make sense to me.
The Juszczyk explanation?
Yeah.
Well, first he gave the generic, it's a win because we got a really good football player. He's at the core of our leadership team. He's a captain. He'll have a chance to make that 10-year wall, as if anybody gives a rat's ass about that thing. But then he said, for him to be able to see what was out there and us to be able to find ultimately a contract situation that worked out for him and us, that's pretty cool. We're happy to have him back. We got him back, and we've done away with having to deal with this next year. I think Kyle will have 2 good years with us, and we'll just see where that goes from there. We're fired up to have the Juszczyk, not just Kyle, but Kristen, back with the 49ers. What the hell, Fish? You had Kyle Juszczyk under contract already, okay? You had him under contract. Then you cut him. Now you bring him back, and you guarantee an extra year on the deal that he didn't have before. And you can sit there and say, well, now we don't have to deal with it. That's not how smart teams operate. That's how dumb teams operate.
I think it's further. I actually think this is pandering. And here's why. I think he was really pissed off about having to restructure his contract. And so instead of making him restructure his contract again this year, they said, we'll cut you and you can go see what you get on the market. And then if you don't like what you get, you just come back for basically the same number we were going to restructure you to anyway. That's what they did for a fullback who's 34 years old, Rob. They pandered to him. That's pathetic. I don't want to read the article about Dre Greenlaw wanting to be the man and Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch flying last minute to go pick him up, because they just pandered to a fullback. Do you think they gave Dre Greenlaw this level of pandering? Or do you think maybe he saw this offseason, was like, yep, I'm already out. And when they came in last minute, it was too little too late. I'm speculating heavily. But let's cut the second part of my speculation, because that's way out there. That's in the realms of I'm just throwing stuff against the wall. Let's come to the first part. When we look at this John Lynch quote, to me, it's very obvious the guy was clearly pissed off about restructuring his contract. He didn't want the embarrassment of doing it again. So they were like, all right, here's what we're going to do. We're going to cut you. You go see what's available for you, and then you come back to us and we'll sign you for this if there's nothing available to you. And that's just how this went. And then they came back and were like, oh, a great football player, 10-year wall, blah, blah, blah. And they got a second tight end with this.
Once again, they are putting out this full court PR campaign to justify a signing of Kyle Juszczyk. It's the same thing they did when they signed him in 2017, Vish. It was, he's so useful.
But it mattered then, right? Because they were building basically the 31st ranked offense, 31st ranked defense. Like, they had so much crap. They were dealing with the leftover of all the domestic violences and DUIs from the Harbaugh and all of that. And he was a good signing to build the reputation at the time. He makes the Pro Bowl every year. He's a great speaker. He represents the organization well. He did a lot of good things for them to have him till now. And even now, I hate doing this. We've done this for 4 Mondays in a row. Even now, he's a contributor for the 45% of snaps he plays. He's not great, not the way they talk about him, but he's not a bad player. He adds something. But now you added a player who directly cuts into his snaps and then pandered to make sure to get him back.
It just seems like they keep bending over backwards to make this guy a part of their team. And they keep him off the field for the majority of the time by design. It doesn't make any sense. It's ridiculous.
It pisses me off because if you're going to bend over backwards, this shouldn't be the guy you're bending over backwards for. Right. That's the problem with it, right?
It should have been.
If you're going to bend over backwards, do it for Dre Greenlaw.
Right. Should have been Aiyuk or Greenlaw or Bosa when his deal was up, so you didn't have to sign him 2 days before the first game of the season. It shouldn't be the fullback.
Yeah, yes. And when he is on the field, he's awesome. No, he's not. He's not been awesome in like 4 years.
Right.
He's pretty good.
And the idea that he hasn't declined at all. Yes, he has. Yes, he has.
He's pretty good. That's what he is. He's pretty good.
So that is obviously annoying for multiple reasons. When it comes,
I don't even understand too. Like, maybe I said it on the last show, maybe I missed the mark so badly on my reading of what Brandon Aiyuk was doing last year and how badly it affected this team. But I don't get the opposite optics behind those two players and the opposite marketing behind those two players this offseason. It just blows my mind. And unless I thoroughly misread that, because to me, now looking back, it was probably way worse than I ever said at any of those points. I'm willing to say that now. I definitely messed up in terms of how I represented talking about it, but I still don't think it was TO level backbreaking or AB where it was something the way it should be talked about this offseason, right? And I thought Juszczyk brought a lot of negative energy last year when he talked about his touches and he talked about how he'd taken a pay cut and all of these sorts of things. But when I look at the marketing behind those two players from the team this offseason, when one was cut and brought back, one is directly under contract and his huge extension is basically kicking in tomorrow, I feel like I don't even understand what's going on with this team sometimes.
Right. If there was anybody that you wanted to make sure was happy, it would be the guy that you're going to have to pay a whole bunch of money to in Brandon Aiyuk. And instead, they're like, we don't care if he's happy. We'll crap on that contract all offseason. But the fullback, we got to make sure that he's right because he was cranky last year.
Also, the mention of his wife, I didn't get it.
It's pandering. I just, who cares? Nobody cares, John. Sorry, we don't sign players because of who they're married to. Sorry.
Right.
Not a factor. And that's nothing against her. It's not a factor for anybody because they're not on the field. But anyway, when it comes to
unless her business, which is exceptionally successful, is directly contributing to the 49ers dollars in some way. Other than that, I don't understand even mentioning that, if that makes sense. And that has nothing to do with her. It's just, I've never heard that for anyone else.
Jed would love it if she could somehow contribute to the 49ers revenue.
Right. Has anybody said anything about Brandon Ayuk's wife when they signed him? Or Fred Warner's wife when they signed him?
Even Claire Kittle, we didn't hear about. Anyway. Let's talk about Dre Greenlaw because there has been a fascinating article in the Denver Post about Dre Greenlaw and how everything went down. And basically, I'll give you the Cliff's notes. I've read it, so you don't have to. The Broncos came out and they wanted Dre Greenlaw. And they came out hard, fast, and in a hurry, and they let him know that he was a priority for them. And the 49ers didn't. and they waited for the Broncos to do all their recruiting of Dre Greenlaw and make an offer to Dre Greenlaw. And then at the 11th hour, Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch flew to Texas to try and convince Dre to sign with the team. Eventually, the 49ers upped their offer and outbid the Broncos for Dre Greenlaw's services. But by then, it was too late. And apparently, according to Greenlaw's adopted father, what his adopted father told him was, look, dude, if you stay with the 49ers, you're Scottie Pippen and Fred Warner is Michael Jordan. Go to Denver and be freaking Michael Jordan, was the quote from his dad. Fantastic quote, by the way. Phenomenal. But this, again, is the 49ers sort of dragging their feet. And even John Lynch himself said, quote, other teams were aggressive in their pursuit of him. We were kind of, I guess, forced to be somewhat reactive. Then when the market was set, we just wanted to go have a conversation with our guy who we have a lot of respect and love for. We have a good conversation with him. He made a decision. We respect that decision. We're grateful to Dre, blah, blah, blah. Again, 49ers not recognizing that you have to act with urgency when it comes to contracts, and it cost them Dre Greenlaw.
I think they miscalculated what Dre Greenlaw's market was going to be this offseason. I personally did, Rob, but I'm not in the NFL. I'm not paid to do this. I think they thought other teams would have the same concerns of his injuries that he did, and his market would kind of be slow and iffy, and the 49ers would be able to ride along with it. That's why John Lynch said they took this wait and see approach initially. And when they did, Denver came in quick. All of these other teams in the first day of free agency were like, no, we want to get Dre Greenlaw. He's a premium player. We saw how he looked in his limited amount of snaps last year, which Kyle Shanahan called him the best player on the football field and all of these things. And then I think it put the 49ers in a sense of, oh, last minute, let's try to bring him in and all of that. I think at that point, they might have already lost him. If I had to guess, theorizing, they probably, the only thing they did was put some doubt in Greenlaw's mind of maybe should he do this. And that quote from his dad probably was the one that ultimately put him over the edge to do it. But I don't like how this is being represented with that quote, because it's just another great sports story where he just wanted to be the man and everybody's happy and that's kumbaya, and the 49ers are, they just missed out on their guy and Greenlaw just went to get his money and there's no hard. No, business in the NFL never works like that. And had the 49ers been assertive and aggressive and treated Dre Greenlaw like he was MJ from the start of free agency and said, Dre Greenlaw, we freaking need you. Dre Greenlaw, we can't lose you. Dre Greenlaw, we're going to start off with our offer being the most aggressive. We're going to be right there in your market. I wonder how this conversation would have changed, and I think this negotiation would have been different. And I hate that quote because I think it represents a part of where he might have been thinking, but it just turns into this great sports story instead of looking at it and saying the 49ers probably miscalculated the value of one of their players once again. By the way, once again.
I think that was a factor for Dre, being the man running his own shop. I think that was a factor because that is a real thing. Like, I've been in that position where you're the number 2 guy for a while and you're ready to be number 1. Here's the difference. If the 49ers came out right away and made a great offer, and by the way, Greenlaw's offer is 1 year, $11.5 million, and then you can get out of it. That's it. $11.5 million guaranteed. It's not like he signed this massive deal. But at the 49ers,
that's still a considerable amount of money, though, for the injuries he's coming off of, right?
Yeah. It's 1 year.
Agreed.
For anything. If the 49ers came out right away and made it a priority, that would have been like, it would have counterbalanced some of that. Like, damn, you know what? They love me. And yeah, would it be great to run my own shop? Yes. But I also have a great thing here, playing alongside a Hall of Fame player in Fred Warner. Salah's back too. Like, that's a part of it. But
they think he's that guy, right? It's right. Even though you're playing next to Warner, we still think you're MJ.
But when the Broncos come and they go, hey, we want you, we love you, and they prove it in their actions and they come out with this deal, and then at the end, the 49ers say, okay, we'll top the deal. What did they top it by, Vish? $500,000, $200,000, $1 million? At that point, Greenlaw's...
Are they even topping it, though, Rob?
Well, supposedly they did. But
what is topping it, right? Because you might make more money over 2 years, but it might not have beaten the $11.5 million he puts in his pocket tomorrow.
Right. So the structure, yes, the devil's in the details there for sure. But I also think at that point, Dre's like, okay, you've topped it for whatever that means, but also you didn't cover the cost of me not being able to be the man. not being able to be MJ. That is a financial thing too. Like if the Niners had offered $50 million more than Denver, of course he's going to stay with San Francisco. He's like, screw it, I can't be MJ, but $50 million, like there's a number there that could have overcompensated for that. The Niners didn't do that, and now Dre Greenlaw is gone.
But does that thought cross his mind if the 49ers go after him right away this offseason?
Right.
Because he thinks about being the guy because the 49ers didn't treat him like he was a priority this offseason, right? If he felt like a guy, he could just be like, well, yeah, I play next to Fred Warner, but they're coming to me right away and saying, no, we need you. We need KJ Wright to be with Bobby Wagner. But the 49ers didn't do that. They let him sit in the market, and then he goes, oh, Denver thinks I'm the guy. Denver wants me to be the guy. The 49ers look at me as the guy next to Fred Warner. That's why they waited. That's why they didn't come after me right away. They waited for Denver to come after me. And so that's the psychology of it, where I agree with you. I don't want to dismiss the concept of a number two wanting to be number one. That exists in every workplace. But the psychology of how that gets into his head is directly affected by how the negotiation goes from the 49ers standpoint. And I think sometimes I feel like I'm being additionally negative on it, only because I feel like it's not being made as obvious as it needs to be.
Right.
And I think this is just one of those situations where if people just said it how it is, I'd be okay with it. But it's the over pandering to be like, no, they did everything they could. Dre just wanted to be the guy, and it's just a great sports story, people. Never works like that in the NFL. It never does. There's never a such thing as that.
Well, there's never such thing as we did everything we could, because you could have offered more money, right? Like, I mean, Myles Garrett wanted to get out of Cleveland, and then they gave him a boatload of cash, and
right.
Crappy Cleveland Browns. I also wonder if part of this too, Vish, is remember the last contract Dre Greenlaw signed with the 49ers came out of nowhere? We were like, oh, damn, the 49ers got Dre Greenlaw for what? I can't help but wonder if he and his team heard the reaction to that and kind of felt like, hey, maybe they sort of got one over on us. And now when the contract came up again this year, it was, all right, you got one over on us. Give us now what we deserve. And the Niners didn't want to do that, and Denver did. And so he's a Denver Bronco.
No, absolutely. I think that plays right into what you've been talking about, right? I think that first contract, he didn't even realize how valuable he was to this defense. A lot of us didn't realize how valuable he was to this defense. I was one of those people. I looked at him, I'm like, this is a run and hit linebacker. That's aggressive. You can find that skill set to play next to your Hall of Famer in a lot of different areas. This shouldn't be that valuable. And for those who carried that wrong opinion, we were proven wrong the last couple of years. No, they need this guy. He brings a different aggression to this defense. He brings a different toughness, a different physicality, a different recklessness. It doesn't exist with this guy. 54, the all-pro. He's not the same guy. He's not tough. He's not the same badass without 57 next to him. We learned these things these 2 years, and Dre Greenlaw did too. And when he came to this offseason, he's like, no. You said I was the best player on the field in the one half I played with two calves, completely different sizes. And, you're all-pro linebacker. He'd been playing the entire season. He'd been allegedly getting all-pro votes again. And you watched that half. Who was better, me or him? Now you won't pay me $11.5 million guaranteed. So that's the other part of it, right? It's how it plays into his head. It all comes together. Like, okay, that first contract, he might not even have known he's this valuable. He's had 2 years to find out how valuable he is. And again, like I criticized Fred Warner a couple times on this show, how valuable Greenlaw is a direct indictment of him to me. Because if Warner's level doesn't change without Greenlaw, replacing Greenlaw isn't as much of a problem for the 49ers. The fact that when KJ Wright's off the field, Bobby Wagner's still the same player, but when Dre Greenlaw's off the field, Fred Warner's not the same player is the bigger underlying issue.
And as Benjamin points out, they got Diamador Lenore on a contract that's a fantastic contract.
Juwan Jennings is another one.
We know Lenore is not going to be shy about telling everybody how good he is. Hell, he already has. He said he and Renardo Green are going to be the best cornerback combo in the game this coming season. They scored a great contract with Lenore. It's already a good deal, and it's only going to get better as the years go on. I'm sure Diamador Lenore is going to remember that the next time his contract comes due. Fortunately for us, we don't have to worry about that. Is one thing right now we don't have to worry about. We'll see what happens with Fred Warner. To be fair to Fred, he has said whatever you think of me, think of Dre Greenlaw. He has said there's no or without, like, he's acknowledged.
And by the way, my criticism of him, right? It's not even a criticism. It's my favorite quote. Our negativity comes from a place of positivity. Like, I'm criticizing a guy because the standard that he's held to is the linebackers in my lifetime is Kuechly, Bobby Wagner, Willis, and Bowman was there for a little bit.
Yep.
And that's very lofty. That's the highest level of linebacker play. Unfortunately, the Lewis's prime, I was too young for that. And so, like, that's to me the standard of linebacker play I'm expecting from Warner. That's the standard that Warner has talked about in the media and all of that. That's the standard that he keeps getting in terms of his awards, his accolades. That needs to be reflected on the field too. And that should be regardless of who's next to him. His level of play should always be.
And hopefully he doesn't play on a fractured ankle next year too.
PMG says Urlacher too. Yeah, of course Urlacher.
Yeah, but that's, I mean,
Briggs as well. Briggs was excellent.
Also, to be fair to Fred, before he fractured that ankle this year, Vish, he did up his level of play.
He plays well in the primetime games.
He was dragging this team to contending in games, forcing fumbles.
Right. The interceptions.
The play against the Vikings where they're going into the end zone about to run away with that game, and he strips the ball out of the running back's hands.
Keeping him alive versus the Rams.
Yes. So he was there, and then he got hurt, and he still played at a very high level, but it wasn't Fred Warner level. Hopefully he's healthy. I don't think he had surgery. I didn't hear of him having surgery. Maybe he did. I don't know. But hopefully that's good, and he can come back and bounce back and be the Fred Warner that we all know and love. So we've got about here on the East Coast 3 hours and 10 minutes until Brandon Aiyuk's option bonus becomes guaranteed. We'll see.
Are you really putting a countdown on this stats?
I thought
I think John Lynch is
think that Jed was going to say, I don't care what you get, move him. And I thought some team somewhere would offer something, a 7th round pick. And I thought Jed was going to say, get rid of him because he wanted to save the money.
Apparently, if they did that.
Well, I thought it was going to happen. I was wrong. Look, I always say I never promise 100% accuracy on the show. I promise 100% authenticity. I tell you how I feel. I am not the first person that's been wrong about a prediction that has an NFL show. Okay. I'll be wrong about plenty more.
Yeah.
But that's what I thought was going to happen, honestly.
I'll say the one thing, because I know what fans are thinking, and I've done the show kind of trajectory. The one thing you realize when you start doing these shows is you don't even account for the places that you could be wrong, if that makes sense. Like, you say things that are normal in passing, and you just have the ability to constantly get things wrong. And like, you just come to realize, like, I just expect to be wrong. So like you said, I'm just going to be authentic about how I feel in the moment, because there's a lot of things that you never expected to be right on that you might say in passing that sometimes just end up happening. And then there's way more things that you're just like, oh, that's a throwaway thing that I just said. And then it comes back and you're like, oh, crap, I was totally wrong on that.
All my correct takes are due to my brain and my acumen, Vish, and nothing else. Luck is not a part of it at all. I refuse to acknowledge it. Before we go, Harold McAllister says, love you guys and love the Niners, but I don't think Greenlaw's health will hold up, so I'm not so mad. I could see justifying letting Dre Greenlaw leave. But if you're the 49ers and you keep saying you wanted to keep this guy, the process of how they went about that did not give themselves the best chance to keep Dre Greenlaw. And that's what bugs me. The fact that Greenlaw is not here, I get it if they didn't want to take that risk. I understand that. But they're telling us that they wanted him back, and their actions don't match their words. And that's why we have the take that we do.
And the reasons you let Greenlaw go, and again, I think those are sensible reasons as well. When you look at where his body is, what position he plays, how he plays, like very, very fair things to look at and say, well, we don't want to put $11.5 million guaranteed in that spot. Like, we're tired of getting burnt with money in these sorts of situations. But then it's what you do and come back, and it's where you put the money. And that's why we've talked about a certain fullback for 3 weeks, and it's pissed everybody who watches this show off.
Right.
But that's the exact point of it. Don't make a big deal about freaking Dre Greenlaw now. There's no point to it.
Completely agree with you, as always, Vish. I feel like we talk through things.
You don't agree that much, Rob.
I do. Well, I agree. It's more about what you did with the money you did spend. It's not about the fact that they didn't bring the guys back. I think we've plowed that ground as a former 49ers head coach. once said. By the way, I saw people throwing around Jim Harbaugh's quote about Jake Moody. Jim Harbaugh has never said a bad thing about any player he has ever coached. I don't care that Jim Harbaugh gave Jake Moody a vote of confidence, which, by the way, he's not coaching Jake Moody anymore. So it's no skin off his back to give Jake Moody a vote of confidence.
And by the way, I wouldn't be surprised if Jake Moody could go be successful on his second team. Right. This is what we talked about when the kickers are drafted in the 3rd round. Because the thing with kickers is usually the 32 that are talented enough to be in the NFL are the 32 that are in the NFL, right? Like Moody isn't Sebastian Janikowski, where his leg is like 80 times more special than Aubrey, for example, who's an undrafted software engineer. No, his leg is about the same. So 95% of things for kickers is just their mentals. And the guys that get drafted, there's such an immense amount of pressure for them to produce right away that getting drafted early kind of breaks their ability. And if you go look at the careers of the guys that have gotten drafted and have been successful, drafted earlier, other than Janikowski, for the most part, they're usually successful in their 2nd and 3rd spots because they need to go through just the mental release of getting cut. And that's why kicking, you go from Nick Folk being the worst kicker in the NFL, and all of a sudden he finds a rhythm. It's not that his talent changed. He's always had the talent to kick the ball through the uprights. Is just his mentality, his confidence, his belief in himself. And so Moody could go through a similar thing, but this brings us to back to the process of why thinking of taking a kicker there, all of that is wrong. And it's a Kyle Shanahan issue. He just doesn't understand that psychology of how people may feel. It's why you draft Javon Kinlaw and put him in the same number as DeForest Buckner with the same pick.
In the same position. Oh, God. Joseph Ernberg says, will this offseason spoil Brandon Aiyuk's attitude in the locker room? I don't know how it couldn't. I mean, he's going to have to do some serious compartmentalizing because everybody's been talking about how much they wish they didn't pay that guy. It's going to be interesting.
It's so interesting, right? Because if he really is a malcontent, this offseason should turn him
big time.
Yeah, right?
More of an Antonio Brown level malcontent.
Right. And I think the part of it is like, other than the shorts thing, I feel like there's not been like misbehavior from Brandon Aiyuk, except for he felt himself a lot. The offseason, he was trying to get money. But Debo did all kinds of things that offseason that he was trying to get money too. And he was immediately forgiven. There must be something behind the scenes where Brandon Aiyuk did something to somebody that's a level of magnitude that can't be forgiven, that we just don't understand or see, or these people are totally unreasonable when it comes to Brandon Aiyuk. That's where I'm at, and I can't make an assumption either or.
They are treating him as if he was Terrell Owens doing sit-ups in the driveway, and he has never done anything close to any of that. And so we'll have to find out. We'll see.
Or AB.
Right. Yeah. It's not that. Shorts. Wow. At a practice. Ooh, what a terrible human being. Marco Corda.
They reprimanded him. It shouldn't be a year later. It's brought up as like he's throwing tantrums and it's the last straw.
Maybe there is more stuff that we don't know about. And if it is, then we'll talk about it and it'll help us better understand the situation when we find out. Shout out to Marco, new YouTube channel member. We appreciate you, Marco. Thank you very much. If you want to become a YouTube channel member, it's less than $3 a month. There's a button go to the YouTube channel. There's a button that says join. Click that, and you will get priority comment response, custom emojis, and membership badges as well. Vish, you are an officer and a gentleman, my friend. Thank you so much for joining me on the show.
Wow. Appreciate it, Rob. Thank you. Hopefully next week we'll get into probably talking some draft stuff. We'll be 2 weeks away. I think we have beaten the dead horse of talking Kyle Juszczyk. It's signing. Nobody's talked about it for longer than us.
Yeah, draft stuff, baby. Bring it on. Hopefully we could meet up because I'm going to your neck of the woods. I'll be in Chicago in a couple of weeks.
Yes, you will.
So we are going to meet up, and then I will have met in person almost every member of the network. I haven't gotten
Who are you missing
yet.
How tall are you?
Not tall enough because Jay's a giant.
Yeah, he's 6'5".
Thank you, everybody. Like and subscribe to the channel, and we'll talk to you next week.